It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning, Revrend Adkins. He is an ordained minister, medium, healer, and teacher, and is currently the pastor of the People's Church of Divine Prophecy in Daytona Beach. A spiritualist medium, he enjoys connecting with spirit loved ones and receiving evidential proof of the ongoing personality and intelligence. His mission is to inspire others and to encourage others to look at things from a different perspective. I've had the privilege to take several different classes with him, and he always has something to contribute, a wealth of information you do not seem to forget. Please help me welcome Reverend Adkins.
Clumsy here this morning, but I guess that's okay. I'd like to welcome everybody here this morning. It's been about a year since I was here last. I started off here in the late 70s, early 80s, studying and coming out here and introducing myself to the different principles of spiritualism. Today is not just Easter Sunday, it's the 165th anniversary of spiritualism also. Spiritualists celebrate their anniversary every year on March 31st. So this Sunday, it's coincidentally the same day. In keeping with this, I'm going to read a little bit about both the traditional spiritualist approach to the holiday of Easter itself, and what spiritualists feel about Easter is that it celebrates the proof of life after death. Christ rose from the dead according to the Christian texts, and we also prove that you don't really die and stay in the grave through our gifts of mediumship. So we have that in common with this day. Many practitioners, through their dedication and sense of truth and connection to spirit, have allowed us to be here today, in this place, in this time. And I thank you all for taking up the invitation of spirit and coming here today. There's been many over the time that have started with the advent of spiritualism. The actual beginning of modern spiritualism was March 31st, 1848, with the Rappings in Hydesville with the Fox sisters. This was not just the beginning of spiritualism, but the beginning of organized spiritualism. From this moment, in modern times, was proof of spirit after life. Two young girls began to communicate through raps, through hand motions, and to prove that spirit could see into this realm and care about people that were still here and try to give messages to people that were still here. This was a profound separation from all the current texts that had taught that you communicate through God or through a Savior to God only, and no other communication came back from the side of life other than through those intermediaries. As you move forward with this history and this truth from the other side of life, there's also the fact that this was not just suddenly manifested March 31st, 1848. It had been building towards that moment since about 400 BC with the history of ours called pagan spiritualism. There was a recorded medium of that time called Veluspa that had come forward in a time when women were treated much like livestock and didn't interfere in the ways of government. And she fell into an automatic trance that was recorded in the Vedic literature and the texts of the time. And she intervened in a severe issue between a father and a son where they were about to get into a battle, and gave spiritual guidance, spiritual vision where they stopped that. This little unknown woman at the time, through her inspiration, was was a part of a tribe called the Hermans, which we now know today as the Celts of the northern steppes of Europe. This is how this obscure tribe was promoted to the standing in the world, was through spiritual visionary, seers, and oracles of that time. She also started the Druid colleges. As you move forward from that time, there were many other inspired people during the course of the next numerous centuries. Rama was one who came forward as a spiritual healer. He brought forth the first treatment for the Black Plague, the first outbreak of the Black Plague in Europe. He developed it through spiritual visionary, spiritual inspiration from a concoction of mistletoe. And today there's actually still a healing system called Escudero that works with mistletoe and the different concoctions that come from it. As you move forward more from that time, you come more into the time that affected us, our spiritualist movement, and the time and this place that we sit in. Andrew Jackson Davis was called the Poughkeepsie Seer. There's plenty of writings about this individual, and you can read about them at your leisure. His primary contribution was the saying of spiritualists, the motto of spiritualists as they moved into an organized movement. It was called keep an even mind in all things. That means don't go to the extreme one way or the other. Total good, total evil, walk the middle road. Find that balance. Don't be extreme about anything. George Colby, the founder of the camp here, is responsible and great for the very seats we sit in here today. He homesteaded this place for 20 years before it became the center that it is. 20 years he sat out here in woodcutter sheds, built his own house, cured himself of tuberculosis by drinking from the streams, following spiritual guidance. I believe he was inhaling pine bark and using the fresh streams of the area, as well as combined with spiritual healing. He was guided here by a vision many states away by the Twin Lakes and the rolling hills of the area. Now, he'd have been in trouble if he'd come here looking for Twin Lakes today because they kind of don't have much water in them. But he was guided here, and when he came here, he found that there was people surveying the land, and he was guided by spiritual guidance. They had already left 3 days ahead of him to go to Tallahassee and stake a claim on this property. He was guided through spiritual inspiration to different modes of transportation, and he literally beat them to Tallahassee prior to them getting there with a 3-day head start they had on them. So it was pretty well desired by Spirit that this place be what it is today. He began to communicate with people from Lilydale, and 2 women came down here and convinced the railroad tycoon to combine a bunch of small spurs and put the first railroad into the land. So here this is the spiritual camp developing the area because of their desire to promote spiritualist teachings. As the religion unfolded, it started with women, then it got to be pretty much men running it, and today predominantly women are the formative figures within the spiritualist movement. They were the first ones to ordain spiritualists, to ordain women as ministers. They're an indigenous religion to the United States, practiced all over the world now. And so as you can see, people's desire to produce spiritual awakening has changed nations. It's changed the face of the world in a lot of places. Some of the people who are less known here that had a very big impact on their sacrifices to allow us to sit here and speak of these things: Mary Rossi, Eloise Page, Marie Lilla, Helen Hansen. Some of the less known workers who were not mediums or ministers. Richard Warren and myself put up the first website that this camp has, which you see now, a lot of it. Jerry Moore has taken over with that, the president. All of us have dedicated our time and energy without being paid to make these things happen. Katie Stiller was another worker who's passed the Spirit. I'm still here, but Richard Warren and Katie Stiller have passed the Spirit. They have given of their time and their effort to make these things happen here. These are generational blessings. These are the types of things that we should honor and remember and be appreciative of the very things that we do and have before us. All of us have these generational blessings in our lives. Our ancestors that we didn't know down our genetic line, people that have made sacrifices, that have stuck out the difficult areas, that have made decisions to have families, that have made decisions to work and sacrifice so that we can be where we're at with our lives today. When we find ourselves disappointed with our opportunities, perhaps we should remember the sacrifices, the generational blessings of those that have allowed us to be where we are at. When I first stepped onto this path of spiritual development, a conscious spiritual development, I had a lot of misconceptions, a lot of things that have changed in the last few years. I started on a conscious path when I was 40, 1 or 2 years ago. And I began to move into it, and as I moved through it, it changed. All spiritual beliefs change and evolve, hopefully, otherwise they die where they're at. You can see this within our own movement of spiritualism. Emma Hardage Britton founded a numerous number of churches in the United Kingdom, spiritualist churches. She was actually one of the founders and movers of the spiritualist movement in the United Kingdom, came from the United States, an American medium, and pretty much put them on track to where they're at today. Her churches are closing right and left because people have held that teaching without allowing it to evolve into current times. So their congregations are falling more and more. Spiritualism as a whole did not have meditation in it in the beginning. It was strictly inspirational, touching the Spirit, opening your mind and allowing it to be inspired by Spirit. That's a very nice addition to meditation. It comes from the yogic disciplines, the Zen and the Buddhist, which we have found beneficial. We have taken that on to help us develop our psychic and spiritual gifts. Everything has to evolve. And that's true with our own spiritual philosophies. Everything has to evolve. Nothing can stay the same. We think of a truth, we practice it in life around us, and we get feedback from the world around us about how effective this is in our lives. We grow from it. Along this path, we run into people. That's where the trouble begins. When we have to practice what we believe in the world around us. It's difficult enough to understand it and believe it in the privacy of our own homes. But when we go out into the world, that's where we begin to have some real difficulty. I do anyway. The best analogy I can give with this is that all of humanity is similar to a stream running down a hill. This stream is drawn without choice and inextricably towards the source of gravity, much as we are drawn back to the source of God through our life. We are drawn without choice. But when you look at the stream, the middle of it is moving surely to its source. Those are the people that have chosen to get onto a spiritual path consciously and work it continually. As you move further outward, the stream seems to be moving more slowly. These are people that tend to be finding their way, choosing their path, and reassessing where they're at. As you move further out, you see parts of the stream that seem to be twirling back on itself. It looks like it's running in circles, not going anywhere. But still, this part of the stream, as with people, is drawn with the same force that the middle of the stream is. God cares about everybody equally and is affecting everybody equally. It's just their conscious awareness of how they're being affected that is different. But these little parts of the stream that seem to be turning back on themselves eventually get drawn back out into the stream and start making their way back towards the source. When we run into people like this, when we find ourselves in this position, Our trust and that drawing power of God is what pulls us through. When we find ourselves in an emotional statement of duress that we feel like we're running in circles in, we have to remember that God is still pulling us as surely as when we felt the love of God and love in our lives. And that's what helps me when I get into those states, is I stop for a moment and I touch back to the presence of God. I take the time to stop in the middle of the confusion. I take time to reconnect to the mind of God and try to feel that peace and calm. I try to feel God's presence in the trying times, as well as the joyous times. It's easy to be grateful when the bills are paid. It's easy to feel God when you're happy. But the true test is feeling the same strength of God in your life when the challenges come. Having the faith that you're going to be led through this, that there is a path through this, and that God has not abandoned you. I'd just like to pose a question here for a moment. How many people in here have cell phones? You don't need to raise your hand. Why do we have cell phones? Because we wish to be in communication with others. We wish to be communicated with. And we pay a lot of money for those phones in a lot of cases, sometimes money that we can't really afford. But would we give that up? Heck no. Got to have that phone, got to be in touch, got to be communicating. If we had even half of that same commitment to our desire to communicate with God, that same fervor, that same feeling of need for connection to God, our lives would be much better off. So next time you feel that pull of need to the cell phone, try to turn around and when you approach God, have that same driving pull. Have that same love, that same desire to be in communication. And you'll be amazed at what happens with your life. We go back again to see things in our lives. Anyone can see what's wrong. Any human being can see what's wrong with their lives. But it takes a spiritual person to see what's right. It takes a spiritual person to see both sides of that coin. Again, back to keep an even mind in all things, the spiritualist motto. When you give, you can't give away what it takes to sustain your life. You have to give and be charitable with an even mind. You overgive and you expect back. So you've given in the wrong spirit. You give what you are able to give. I found out something very interesting recently in my life. I had been giving and giving and giving to help some family members. And they kept doing and doing and doing the same thing. And eventually my ability to give was taken away from me. I had nothing left to give. And they were still in the same state with their lives. So what happens if you keep interfering in somebody's life instead of helping? God will remove your ability to do that at some point. You will find yourself having to withdraw from the situation, either emotionally or monetarily. You're going to find yourself with an inability to continue to be involved in that life. God wants to guide people on a one-to-one basis. We can help, we can aid, but we're not supposed to interfere with people's lives. We should not allow people to live a lifestyle that is detrimental to them, regardless of how much we love them. One of the biggest problems I've run into with spiritual development is I set myself up an ideal, and then I have difficulty coming up to it. And I start beating myself up. Well, I guess that was wrong, or I guess that wasn't the way to be, or maybe I'm just not up to the task today. That's the worst thing you can do to your spiritual development. Because if you can ask that question, you are a spiritual person. People of nefarious nature do not ask themselves those kinds of questions. If you're asking yourself the question of personal evolvement and spirituality, then you are a spiritual person. Circumstances in your life should never dictate to you the level of spiritual development you have in your life. Circumstances are put before you for you to grow through. Just because difficult things are happening to you does not mean you're not being a spiritual person. Which means that this event is indispensable to you for your spiritual growth. As you move through life, you are going to find people that it is absolutely impossible to come to terms with. I don't care who you are. I'm sure Mother Teresa had that, Gandhi had that. There are people that you will never come to terms with. And again, that falls back on not needing to be involved, not supposed to be involved with these people. You back away from them, you wish them well. People that have wronged you, it's not necessary to allow them a second shot at you in order to be forgiven. You can forgive them, you can wish them well, wish them on with their evolution, but it's not necessary to get involved with them and give them a second shot at you. That's not. There's an old saying, messed me over once, shame on you. Messed me over twice, shame on me. Be forgiving, be kind to them, but stay apart from them if you can't deal with them. I would like to, in closing, give a little tale about, from a friend of mine, Reverend Arlene Sikora. She's still alive. She's just not around this area anymore. But she told a story one time that was very evidential to me. She said that one time there was this eagle that fell into a barnyard full of chickens, little baby eagle. And the eagle was taken under the wing of the mother hen, lovingly, caringly, moving the eagle around with all the little chickens. And as the chicks started growing up, the eagle started growing up. And they're walking around, the mother hen's teaching them how to peck and scratch in the ground, how to carry on like a chicken. And the eagle looks up one day and he sees these other eagles flying over the barnyard. And his heart soars with them because that's his nature. Not the circumstances that he finds himself in. And he says to one of the other chicks, he says, oh, wouldn't it be so beautiful to soar high and free like that? And the little chick looks at him and says, you can't do that. You're a chicken. Keep scratching like you're supposed to. So the moral of the story is you can soar with the eagles or scratch with the chickens. It's your choice.